Hey everyone, it's Lisa from the blog farmhouseonboone.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable little dress for toddlers. You might know that I have 4 little boys. My 2 girls are older, and so it's been a long time since I've been able to make little dresses like this, and I really just wanted to. I have so much fun playing around with different trims and colors and patterns and piecing them together. And so I decided to share it with you all in case you do have a toddler girl. Now on the blog, I have measurements for the 12 to 18 month size and 2T. And then I also have another tutorial where I go into more of the girls sizes. So you can reference the blog for this entire pattern, but I'm gonna show you the process here, and that blog post will be linked down in the description box. So you start this process by cutting out the pattern pieces. Cut 2 for the ruffle. Cut 2 for the skirt. Cut 2 for the bodice. Cut 2 for the sleeves. And cut 1 for the tie piece. Next, make a little pattern piece with a 2" by 4" piece of paper and round off the corner. This is gonna be your pattern piece for the sleeves. So to use this pattern piece, fold a bodice piece in half and lay the little piece of paper in the top corner and trim around it. Repeat with both sleeves folded in half and with the other bodice piece. For the applique, cut a square piece of fabric 4½ inches by 5½ inches. Then iron that square to a piece of heat and bond. You could definitely skip this part, but I like to do this step because it keeps the applique from fraying. So if you just sew it straight on, you're gonna get some strings coming off of the little bib portion of the dress. But if you add the applique, you won't. So I like to iron that on and then cut it and then iron it in place after that. I will link all sources in the description box below. If you've never used heat and bond, it's super easy to use, very inexpensive. It's like $2 at Walmart. Hi, sweetie. Next, fold the square piece in half, and with the short side, make a mark down about 1½ inches and then round a curve to the center point where you folded. That will create a nice rounded shape that will serve as the little bib applique on the dress. Next, iron it in place. And then stitch around the curve to attach it to the bodice. You smiley boy. You're smiling. You think I'm talking to you, huh? Next, attach the trim that you want to use. I used eyelet this time. Sometimes like to use the crochet trim, whatever you want to line it with. I've also made a little ruffle with fabric, like a very narrow ruffle, and that's adorable to use as well. Just sew the trim all the way around the curved bib part. You could pin it on, or you can just do it as you go, whichever works best for you. Next, to attach the sleeves to the bodice, line up the armhole from one sleeve to the armhole of one bodice piece with right sides together and sew a narrow 1/4 inch seam. Attach the other sleeve to the other side of the bodice in the same way, and then the other piece of bodice to the 2 sleeves in a circular fashion so that both sleeves are attached to the bodice. So it goes sleeve, bodice, in a circular fashion. Make sure to finish off all seams with a serger or a zigzag stitch. This will just help the dress to be clean on the inside and not unravel. Next, put the hem in the top of the bodice. Now this will be an elastic casing that will serve as the top of the dress. So fold the top of the bodice and the sleeves down 1/2 inch and then another 1/2 inch, and then sew a hem all the way around, leaving about a 1/2 inch space open. Next, take a piece of narrow elastic, I have the measurements for the neck elastic on the blog for the size that you are looking for, and push it all the way through, making sure not to pull the other end through so that you can join the two pieces of elastic together. This will create a nice stretchy neckline that makes this dress able to fit a child for a really long time, which is great. When one end of the elastic meets the other end, overlap them about a 1/2 inch, sewing back and forth several times to make sure they don't come undone, and then pull the top so that the elastic goes fully inside the casing, and then top stitch the little 1/2 inch opening closed. Next, to finish off the ends of the sleeve, hem them the same way you did the top, folding it over a 1/2 inch and another 1/2 inch, leaving that little spot open, again a 1/2 inch spot to put elastic through, and do the same. Attach the ends of the elastic for the sleeves and pull them in and close the top part in the exact same way that you did with the neckline. Now that the bodice is all finished, you're going to work on the skirt. First, take the two skirt pieces and lay them on top of each other, right sides together, lining them up, and sew 1/2 inch seams down both short sides. Again, use a serger or a zigzag stitch to finish off those raw edges. Next, put a gathering stitch in the top of the skirt. Now to do this, I have a whole tutorial in my Simple Sewing series on how to do a gathering stitch, but essentially I like to put my stitch length up as high as it will go and my tension up as high as it will go. And this will make the ruffles automatically when you are putting the fabric through the machine. I like to do gathering stitches on the front and the back instead of one big gathering stitch all the way around. It just makes it easier to work with. So from one side seam to the other, create a gathering stitch and then stop the machine and then do the same thing, a gathering stitch on the back from side seam to side seam. Take one of the long ends of the thread and gather the fabric along it until the top of the skirt matches the bottom of the bodice. Line up the side seams of the skirt and the bodice and pin it all the way around so that it matches up. Next, make sure to put your stitch length back down to the normal, not the long that you had for the ruffle, and sew the skirt to the bodice, making sure to line up the side seams. I like to sew underneath so that I can see where the gathering stitch is, and I sew as close as possible to the gathering stitch. This just helps to make the ruffles lay really nicely. Again, zigzag stitch or serge the raw edges to finish them off. Next, take the two ruffle pieces, lay them together, right sides together, and sew seams along the sides, about a 1/2 inch seam on each side. Finish with a zigzag stitch or serger. Then to hem the ruffle piece, because that will be the bottom of the dress, fold one long side up a 1/2 inch and another 1/2 inch and press it in place to create a hem, and then stitch the hem in place. Next, put a gathering stitch in the top of the ruffle, just like you did with the top of the skirt. Pull on one of the string ends to make the ruffle match the bottom of the skirt. Place it right sides together with the side seams lined up and pin the ruffle piece in place to the bottom of the skirt. Again, make sure to turn your stitch length back down to the regular stitch length and attach the ruffle to the skirt. Next, to prepare the tie piece, fold it in half lengthwise. Fold one end 1/2 inch down toward the wrong side of the fabric. Stitch all the way down the long side with a narrow 1/4 inch seam, and fold the other short end over a 1/2 inch as well, leaving both ends completely open at this point. Next, take a safety pin and pull the tie piece right side out. and press it flat with a hot iron. Fold the long tie piece in half and mark the center, and place that center underneath the eyelet on the front of the dress so that the tie piece is centered. Then stitch the tie piece in place with the top placed right under where the ruffle comes down. Make sure to fold the eyelet up so that the tie piece can come right underneath it. Stitch it along the top and along the bottom near the ruffles on the front, making sure that it's centered. Next, top stitch around the long pieces that are left hanging off the side of the dress with a very narrow top stitch all the way around to close off those ends and make it look really nice. To finish it off, add a couple of buttons or however you want to embellish it. For this project, I used a couple of white buttons. I really love doing that. I think it's just such a cute little element to add. All right, well, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Make sure to visit the blog post for the exact measurements so that you can make this for a little girl in your life. It's a simple sewing project. If you haven't yet watched my simple sewing series, I'll leave a link for that in the description box. I teach you how to make ruffles, hems, how to even thread your machine so that you can get started making projects like this. Trust me, even if you know nothing about sewing, you can make a dress like this for any size for a little girl with the tutorial on my blog and here on this channel. Once you start doing it, if you are a person who loves creating, you are going to love it. I love putting together different fabrics. A lot of times I'll take these bright florals and bright stripes and polka dots and mix them all together, and it has that kind of whimsical style. It's such a fun thing to do. I used to love doing it when my girls were little, and then now I have a bunch of sweet little boys, so I have to make it for other people's little girls, but every once in a while I just have to. Maybe someday I'll have granddaughters. All right, well, thank you so much for watching this video. If you're brand new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I make 2 new videos every week on food from scratch, natural living, and a handmade home. Thank you so much for stopping by the farmhouse.